42%. Now, again, that's a closer margin than in 2020, but it is leaning in Trump's favor right now. You could say it's still kind of close. It's a good margin, but it's still kind of close. Now, that's where people are putting their money, right? That's where people are kind of putting their personal interests aside from just the election. But we also have other forms of debatably more accurate polling suggesting who's going to win the elections. That is cookies. Now, again, those of you not in the U.S., hear me out. Now, why are cookie polls taken seriously? Why do we talk about who's buying cookies and why people buying cookies is going to, again, maybe determine the outcome of the elections? The reason that this is taken seriously is because the cookie polls tend to be done in swing areas of swing states. Basically, here's what happens. Bakeries come out, and there's some that do it every 4 years. Bakeries come out in these areas, and they make cookies for the major candidates. And the number of cookies that people buy, again, in these key counties of swing states, gives kind of an unofficial poll of who people in the swing states might end up voting for. Some of the cookie polls have actually been surprisingly accurate. Although, look, 2020, some said Trump was going to win. The cookie polls were actually going for Trump. Trump ended up not winning, depending on how you view it. So take that as you will. But first off, here's what one of the bigger cookie polls is saying out of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania right now. Washington Examiner. It says, a bakery near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is conducting its own presidential poll with cookie sales for each candidate. And it said Oakmont Bakery started its election cookie poll in the early 2000s with less than 3 weeks until former President Donald Trump and Kamala Harris face off on the election day. The bakery has said customers have bought more than 21,000 Trump cookies versus around 6,200 Harris cookies. So Trump is massively leading the cookie polls. Again, by a good margin, right? Now, again, Harris has 6,200 cookies as of October 20th. Trump had 21,000. Now, I note that customers could also pick a neutral candidate cookie, which had more than 9,000 sales. And so even if you combine the Kamala cookies and the neutral cookies, Trump's still winning the cookie poll. Now, look, this is a long-time tradition, it says, for that bakery, which sold more Trump cookies in 2020 and 2016 than his opponents at the time, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. And in 2012, the Mitt Romney cookies beat out Barack Obama. So you could say the 2012 ones weren't really accurate. Mitt Romney did not win that election. But again, that emphasizes that this is kind of a swing county. This is an independent area. And again, they wanted Mitt Romney back in 2012. Suggesting again that these are voters who are kind of, again, swing voters. These are voters who could go either way. Now, like Pittsburgh, that area where the bakery is, it's pretty important for this election. It has been seeing more political TV ads, Pittsburgh, than anywhere else in the country. Just emphasizing how much focus both candidates are putting on Pittsburgh. And like Pennsylvania overall is being regarded as one of the most important of the 7 swing states this time around. The state has mostly gone Democrat before, but it went for Trump in 2016. Kind of like the opposite of Georgia, right? Georgia was voting Republican since like 1992 or something like that, but they went for Biden last time. Pennsylvania is kind of the opposite, mostly Democrat, went for Trump in 2016. So how about the other swing state bakeries? Well, let me show you what's happening out of Minnesota. Another cookie poll. This is from a local media on October 30th. It says a bakery in Minnesota is sharing the weekly results of its ongoing presidential cookie poll. The red, white, and blue sugar cookies at Hansen's Bakery and coffee in Red Wing feature buttercream frosting, as well as one of 2 names, Trump or Harris. It notes that as of Monday, again October 30th, former President Donald Trump was at 6,743 cookies sold to Vice President Kamala Harris's 3,385 cookies, according to Week 12 results that the bakery posted on TikTok. So depending on which poll you're going by, Trump is leading by double margins in cookies, right? The cookie polls out of Minnesota and Pennsylvania, they tend to be the ones people focus on, on the cookie poll front. Again, cookie polls are not absolute by any means. They're right. They've often been right, but not all the time. And they do work as indicators, which is why people take them seriously, right? They show indications of which way the swing states are going. That's why they're taken seriously. Now, this time around, just kind of another factor with this, you could also argue that maybe they're not accurate this time because people are actually driving from different counties or even from different states to go and buy these cookies. And because you have people from other places going to buy them, maybe it's not as indicating. It doesn't indicate as well maybe what the local voters are going for. Take it as you will. Again, now, but if we go by official polling, right? We talked about the betting odds leaning towards Trump, the cookie polls at least by double margins voting for Trump. The odds in terms of polling, actual polling, is also important. Now, for the most part, the polls, again, leading up to now, for the most part, they had Trump and Harris within just a few percentage points from each other. A lot of this is going to change depending on which media you read. If you're reading a lot of the kind of left-wing media, you're going to see oftentimes that, Trump afraid, Harris winning in the polls. If you read a lot of right-wing media, they'll say Harris afraid, Trump is winning in the polls. In reality, they've been very close. They've been within a few percentage points of each other. And, again, it goes by which poll you're looking at, but most of the trustworthy ones have been pretty close. Now, by late October, a lot of the polls were showing Harris in the lead. But, hear me out, right? Within the first few days of November, just, leading up to this, they've been swinging in Trump's favor. And so they fluctuate, right? By late October, Harris was like 1 or 2 points ahead, going by which one he went by. Now they're in Trump's favor. Trump is actually winning the polls, at least, again, just as of just recently. Now, and again, that's only within a few percentage points, which many people would say is within the margin of error. Although some people would say that all polls are within the margin of error because Trump tends to outperform the polls. Overall, though, we can say that polling is still pretty close. I can tell you something interesting, though, based on my own personal experience. I was in Georgia just recently. Again, I did a special feature on it. We published it on Friday. Some of you may have seen it. If you haven't, go watch it. And in that special episode I was doing in Georgia, again, Georgia now being a swing state, I was talking to voters going to vote, coming out from early voting. Also just doing kind of man on the street interviews, just talking to people. I can tell you, a lot of people who look like they're going to vote Trump will not tell you. And again, very few people recognized me, in Georgia. And so, I went up to some of them saying, "Hey, I'm doing again, polling. I'm asking people, who you think is going to win or who you're voting for." Most of the people voting for Kamala, most people voting Democrat, were very eager to talk. A lot of the Democrats were very willing to talk, in my experience. When I'm just telling them I'm doing exit polling or doing polling, a lot of other people who looked like they're conservative, they would tell me things like, "Oh, you don't want to know who I'm voting for. Oh, I'd rather keep that to myself. I don't want to talk about it." A lot of those people are the ones that I think could make polling inaccurate. And again, I think that's also why polling oftentimes is not quite dependable, frankly, because especially in the current political climate, where people are being demonized and attacked and labeled like, I don't want to name all the names of people. You've seen them, right? Calling people fascist and everything else. A lot of people don't want to get pulled into a conflict, especially people who are not like confrontational, especially people who might think they'll be attacked, especially if they go on TV talking about it. A lot of people will not say who they're voting for because they don't want to be attacked. In my personal experience, that could be a factor that will significantly change the reliability of polling. Because again, a lot of people who are voting Trump will not say it. And frankly, it's a self-created problem, I think, by a lot of these agencies that do this, because many of them, have been engaged in attacking voters, criticizing them, attacking their views, and so on. And so, what do you expect